Hi everyone. Oh, happy day. So, I wanted to come on today and talk more about the ego. I wanted to talk about like what are the thought processes that come up with the ego? How do we begin to recognize it? And then I wanted to give you just a sneak peek into like the three things that have been really helpful for me in recognizing the ego and essentially living in harmony with it, because I think a lot of people talk about ego death, but I don't think that that is realistic for a lot of people. And I also don't think the ego is a threat or an enemy to us. It's just something that we need to learn how to recognize and to become aware of, and how to live our lives by working with the ego. So, the first thing I want to say is I want to bring gratitude to the teachers that have taught me a lot around the ego. And one of them is Eckhart Tolle. If you haven't been able to read any of his books, he's amazing. The one thing I say is just flow with or read and pay attention to what you need to hear, and then let go of the rest. And it's a book that I always come back to, because sometimes things make sense and sometimes they make no sense to me. So just know, depending on where you are and where you're at in your life at this moment, some things will make sense, some things won't. So just take what works for you. And that's the same thing with the information that I give you. Another teacher that I'll be talking a little bit about his work today is Michael Singer, and he's also amazing. He wrote the book on The Untethered Soul, and so that's another book I would highly recommend. So that one, and then A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle is amazing. So we'll jump into this. Just to give a recap on ego, so I posted about this, just opening up to the ego and understanding it a little bit on Monday, so you can go back and read that post. Or just to give, like I said, a recap, our ego is something that identifies with form identity. So essentially what form identity is, it's our possessions, it's our past, it's our achievements, our opinions, our successes, our failures. So our ego identifies with all of that. And we needed our ego as children because it essentially kept us safe or unsafe. It kept us in our bubble, in our home where we felt safe, or maybe we didn't feel unsafe, but we needed that for survival. So what happens in adulthood is that we can get attached to our ego, or we can also be very unconscious to it. So for me, I was extremely unconscious to the ego that was running inside my mind for a very long period of time. And I would even teach this stuff to people. Like I would teach about it, but it's like I wouldn't catch those glimpses of my own personal ego until I started learning about it and doing this reading and doing this research, and then teaching people, like teaching my clients now more about the ego. So another thing with this, and this is just kind of like a background, is, and what I want you to really take away from this is the ego is essentially the thoughts in our head, or our self-talk, or what Michael Singer likes to call the roommate. So essentially, we all have this voice inside our head. So stay with me here. Like I had a client one time who said, well, if I have a voice inside my head telling me all these things, then they're going to send me to a psych hospital. And I was like, no, that's not what I'm saying here. But we all have this voice inside our head. So, and you can take a moment and just sit in silence. I'm not going to, spend this time on here, but you sit there and then you see kind of what comes in your mind. And what I've noticed for a lot of people is that when I tell them to sit in silence for like 3 to 5 minutes and focus on their breath, the thoughts in their head that come up are, why am I doing this? This is a waste of time. Or am I doing this correctly? What the hell am I actually doing here? So that's that voice inside our head. That's that inner roommate. And so what I want you to notice is that we are not the thoughts inside our heads. We are the observer of those thoughts. So we have a choice to decide, are these thoughts working for me, or are they working against me? And usually, sometimes our ego can work against us, because it can get attached to these certain opinions, right? And it can get attached to certain labels. And let's say someone goes against the opinion that I have, that I'm attached to, and then what happens? Right? So if you have an opinion and I say no, I don't agree with that, then usually we can get really angry about that, or we can lash out and say like, well, what, like, then we have nothing in common if you don't agree with this opinion that I have, right? So it can go that way if we are unconscious to this ego part of it, because essentially, right, we're all allowed to have our opinions. We're all allowed to do whatever essentially that we want to do, but we, attack, like we don't, trying to get a glimpse of this attack. Like sometimes we feel attacked and there's no reason to feel attacked, right? Because in the scheme of things, it's not that big. It's not that big of a deal, right? Or that's what I've noticed in my life is when I feel attacked by someone or someone doesn't agree with me, then I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't like them anymore. Like they need to get away from me. But essentially, it has nothing to do with that. So it's really learning how to just be aware of the ego, like what's going on inside your mind. So let me see what else I want to talk about. So becoming aware, right? That's the thought, those thoughts that are running inside your mind. I remember I was going to go back to therapy again because I'm a therapist and, we need to go to therapy. And I was going to go back because I continued to have these judgmental thoughts in my head. So I was judging other people and I wasn't really sure why this was coming up for me. So this is just an example. And then I noticed, and I went to my therapist and she said, like, Brooke, everyone judges people. It's just a part of life. You're not a bad person for having these thoughts. But what I suggest for you to do, and what I tell a lot of my clients to do, is become aware of that, right? And then you can say, is this something that I want to be in my head? And what I think now is that was my ego. That was my ego coming up. And so I have a choice now to decide, oh, hey, Brooke, that's your ego. So let's switch it. So what's something else that I can think in this moment? So maybe if I'm judging someone else, I can actually think, what do I like about that person, or what do I like about them? So what am I judging? And then I switch it in that kind of way. And so that's the awareness piece. So becoming aware of the thoughts inside our heads. And then the next part is once we become aware, it's figuring out, how do I unattach from this? So how do I notice it, become aware of it, unattach? And that is coming into this presence, into this present moment. And so those are the three things that I find really helpful in working through this part of my ego is I become present, I unattach to any thought or label or opinion that's in my head. I unattach from it. I detach from it. And then I accept it, right? And I also accept whatever anyone else in front of me is doing by being in that present moment. And that, I can tell you, can be really difficult. It's taken me it's taken me years to really hone in on this because it is a practice. It's something that we get to practice every day just to be more of who we are and just to identify more with our souls than with, an opinion or like a silly thing that we have kind of running around in our head that sometimes, usually if it's our ego, it's not working for us. And it's not working for anyone else because it keeps us stuck in our patterns and in our grievances and what we complain about, and also our resentments. So it comes up with all of those. So those are the main things that I wanted to talk about with the ego. And also, the other thing is the ego essentially keeps us unattached from the other people around us, or not unattached, but it keeps us disconnected from the people around us. And from what I know about the people I work with and all the clients that I've seen and sit in front of me, is all we really want is to feel good. And all we really want is to be well. And all we really want is to be listened to and heard and understood. And our ego can sometimes keep keep that from us. Because if I'm sitting here and I'm in my ego, then I'm not going to hear essentially anything that anyone is saying to me. I'm going to be thinking about what my retort is, or what I'm going to, say to this person next, or how I'm going to run out of the room because I can't get out of here fast enough. Right? So it's really becoming aware of, is this working for me or is it not working for me? Is this keeping me disengaged or disconnected from the world around me? Because a lot of times it is. So those are the main things here. I hope this was helpful. I'll be talking a whole lot more about the ego, but if you have any questions come up about this, or if you want to talk about how this might be coming up in your life and how you want to shift it, please reach out. That's a lot of the work that I do with people. But yeah, I love you guys. Thank you for being here. And talk to you soon.